Hi, my name is Michelle Morgan, and my research presentation is on urban policy for housing security. Housing fulfills a basic need and helps contribute to the well-being of individuals, families, and communities. When an individual or family is experiencing housing insecurity, they are almost always experiencing some level of poverty. The lack of safe, affordable, and sustainable housing can lead to barriers for economic growth for individuals and can put a strain on community resources like food pantries, health clinics, and housing assistance programs. Individuals can experience poor health, food insecurity, and hunger. They can be exposed to violence and have poor work and academic performance. Housing insecure individuals also may experience frequent moves, overcrowded homes, and intermittent homelessness. Policies and city planning strategies can encourage sustainable housing development, improve infrastructure, stabilize a community, balance population growth, and alleviate long-term material hardship and stress. They can encourage the use of energy-efficient construction materials and methods, control the size and type of housing developments, control the costs associated with government regulation to help reduce construction costs, which are often passed down to residents, and they can also educate the public about the benefits of public housing to individuals and the surrounding economy. They can mitigate the negative stereotypes associated with low-income housing projects. The purpose of this study is to look at housing insecurity from a policy perspective in Chicago, Illinois. I will evaluate and discuss housing programs intended to solve housing accessibility, affordability, sustainability, and safety problems for low-income individuals in urban populations. Looking at housing policy that has been implemented in Chicago, we will begin to recognize the role housing policy has in revitalizing communities and positively affecting the lives of low-income individuals and families in urban populations. We can also see what policy tools may be useful in similar situations and in similar communities. For the purpose of this research, housing insecurity is defined as when the proportion of housing costs are high in relationship to income. That can include living in poor quality housing, unstable or unsafe neighborhoods, overcrowded living arrangements, and homelessness. Urban policies related to low-income housing are often conceptualized based on the desire to help economically disadvantaged individuals achieve and maintain some measure of housing security. This research study will utilize social construction theory applied within the framework of policy design to study the phenomenon of policy construction and application to social problems affecting urban residents related to housing security. Social construction theory proposes that individuals of power and influence are guided by socially constructed norms and the beliefs that less affluent groups need and deserve their help to overcome disadvantages from policy making. Policymakers would be the advantaged group lending their support based on the assumption and notion that they can help. Through this theory, we can assess the motivations and thoughts behind policy interventions. Policies that address housing security may vary in their level of importance based on where they are in the housing insecurity spectrum. In line with socially constructed norms and beliefs, it is assumed that housing policies can help make housing more accessible, affordable, sustainable, and safe for low-income individuals in urban areas. It is also assumed that local policy solutions should be effective because policymakers can target policies that reflect housing needs of low-income residents in their community. I used a qualitative design that focused on phenomenon related to policies designed to mitigate housing insecurity in Chicago, Illinois. To collect data, I reviewed readily available materials provided by the City of Chicago through their website and research articles found through online databases. Databases and websites were scanned for keywords and phrases related to the topic. Narrowing my focus to policies in Chicago, I was able to identify and reflect on socially constructed norms that may have influenced policy formation. Chicago's home rule status and its approach to housing affordability, sustainability, access, and safety under an administration that had been reasonably stable through many years of progressive Democratic leadership. This approach allowed me to recognize perceptions and ideals that could have been relied upon to develop policies. It also allowed me to formulate arguments about the policy and gain an understanding of the impact that home rule autonomy may have had on policymakers' ability to deal with housing security at the local level. Possible limitations are the limited geographical location and home rule provisions. However, the limited geographical location could also be seen as a strength depending on how the results were perceived and utilized. Due to the use of social construction theory, it was necessary to narrow the focus to a specific area where people likely shared common norms, guiding beliefs and behaviors. The problems encountered in Chicago would be unique related to housing security. However, solutions utilized could be used to compare and contrast with solutions formulated in urban locations around the United States. Another limitation is that home rule provision in Chicago, Illinois may be different than comparably sized cities in different states. Therefore, the results of my research may not correlate as well with other urban communities. The estimated population of Chicago, Illinois is 2,716,450 and has grown less than 1% since 2010 and is currently the third largest city in the United States. It consists of 100 neighborhoods with 77 community areas and 50 wards. The city government structure consists of a mayor and city council with 50 aldermen representing the 50 wards. The City Council operates as a legislative branch that has been granted home rule provisions by the state constitution of Illinois, with the authority to regulate and protect the public health, safety, morals, and welfare of the citizens, while also having the ability to license, tax, and incur debt on behalf of the interests of the city. The city utilizes multiple revenue streams from a variety of sources, such as fees, enterprise partnerships, debt service, property tax levies, and grants. Their total 2019 budget is $10.6 billion, and the city anticipates revenue from the Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund to be roughly $28.6 million in 2019. This revenue is comprised of fees from the city's density bonus program and the Affordable Requirements Ordinance, as well as 2018 revenue from their Low-Income Housing Trust Fund. This fund began in 2016 and is designed to be used to provide permanent housing for low-income Chicago residents. Grant funding like the Community Development Block Grant has been used to fund housing programs in the past and should continue through 2019 with an expected grant in the amount of $91.6 million. The tax increment financing revenue, which funds capital improvements, is taken from the portion of the local property taxes collected in the city. It is expected to be approximately $700 to $800 million in 2019. 28%, or between $195 to $224 million, is to be used for community development projects, including affordable housing construction and rehabilitation. The 2019 budget proposal shows the city's administration is committed to providing low-income housing assistance. It also reveals the efforts by the administration to engage the private community in achieving a cohesive and progressive housing policy for the city. The Chicago Sustainable Development Policy was implemented in 2004 to enhance the sustainability of housing development, construction, and renovations in which 5 or more units where financial assistance of more than $1 million was received from the city through tax increment financing or financial assistance from home investment partnership grants, community development block grants, the Chicago's Low-Income Housing Trust Fund, and low-income tax credits or allocations from a variety of other programs. To comply with the policy, new construction developments were required to earn 100 points, and renovation projects were required to earn 25 to 50 points based on the scale of renovations. These points were earned through an implementation of sustainability measures identified on a predetermined list of approved building certifications. The city reported that as a result of the policy, they've been able to moderately achieve progress toward their 2012 goals of engaging residents in accelerating the economy in Chicago by assisting people and companies in adopting sustainable practices. They also report that the city was able to fully achieve the goal of implementing citywide energy efficiency by 5% and decrease annual water usage by 2% or 14 million gallons per day annually, and increase access to recycling and improve policies to promote waste reduction and reuse since 2012. These goals seem to be the beginning of efforts to improve sustainability in many areas of the city, including housing development. However, efforts to locate any qualitative data readily available on their website or on published research articles related to any specific measures implemented, or if any improvements to housing-specific sustainability measures between 2004 and 2012 or after 2015 was challenging. Efforts to locate any data on how the policy may have directly or indirectly influenced sustainable housing measures was also unsuccessful. Assuming that each housing development or renovation had secured funding assistance from the city, one may be able to calculate the number of housing development projects and renovations that completed implementation of sustainability measures. However, without any data on what sustainable measures were implemented or the level of compliance with the policy, assessing the effectiveness of the policy is not possible. It is also possible that this policy may have been constructed based on the perception that citizens desire a more sustainable community, or to satisfy policymakers' beliefs about what is vital to the citizens and to the city, both of which would indicate they utilize their home rule autonomy with only modest success so far based on the information available. However, it could be due to it being a relatively recent policy initiative. Another suggestion as to why the policy was not effective is that it was not constructed in a way that would make it effective. Although developers are encouraged to implement the policies, there is no penalties associated with this policy, and citizens or developers who purchase or construct single-family detached homes are not obligated to comply with this policy. That being said, without any real effort to penalize or enforce the policy, very little numbers of the population will comply on a regular basis. It could be suggested that this policy was initiated to satisfy the perception and rather than the realities that to solve the problems of sustainability in the community. Further study is therefore warranted. The Chicago Affordable Housing Preservation Ordinance was conceived in 2007 to help preserve and protect the affordability, sustainability, and safety of apartment rentals after losing federal housing use restrictions. This ordinance requires the owners of rental housing who receive assistance from the federal government to notify the city within 12 months before the affordability restrictions expire or are being terminated. Affordability provisions such as the Federal Mortgage Assistance, Mortgage Insurance, HUD Section 8 housing contracts. Opportunity Investment Fund was created in part by the fees and penalties collected from the ordinance to provide low-cost loans to developers to purchase multifamily buildings and commit to providing affordable units. A violation under the ordinance carries a fine from $200 to $1,000 per offense. A portion of the fines and fees are commingled with investments from private partners in Cook County to support the Preservation Compact of Cook County. The city proposes to invest $300 million from a combination of this fund and other funding sources to support developers who wish to make affordable housing available in higher cost areas of the city, with a commitment by the city to preserve approximately 3,000 rental units in areas of the city identified as having very low income residents. This commingling of funds makes it difficult to determine the exact impact the ordinance has had on the preservation of affordable rental housing. However, it can be seen as an incentive by developers to follow city guidelines to avoid penalty. The Opportunity Investment Fund appears to be a resource that developers can tap into if their aim is to make a refurbished rental building affordable. To what extent was hard to ascertain due to the funding being relatively recent opportunity and the lack of information available about the fund's impact on the city's Chicago website. However, there appears to be a commitment by the city to make a substantial investment in affordable housing and preservation of rental units according to the 2019 budget. The Chicago Affordable Requirements Ordinance was also enacted in 2007. This ordinance states that developers must set aside 10% of the residential units as affordable or donate $100,000 per required unit to the city's Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund. If a developer receives city financial assistance, then 20% must be affordable. Those subject to the ordinance are projects that are subject to zoning changes, land purchased from the city, or for land where financial assistance was received from the city. Units must be defined as affordable based on HUD guidelines, and if financial assistance is provided for the project, income limits are reduced. Affordable units are placed in a Chicago Community Land Trust, ensuring long-term affordability. According to the 2019 Budget Overview Report, the city indicated the ordinance has been successful at raising enough funds to provide funding assistance for housing projects that have created an additional 1,847 affordable units, with more in the planning phase. The revenues gained from the city's affordable requirements ordinance fees was used to rehabilitate and construct affordable housing in high poverty neighborhoods, and the city claims to have had gradual success at increasing the number of affordable units available since 2016. However, again, there was limited qualitative data or quantitative data available on their website or in online databases to substantiate their claims. It was hard to determine if the city was keeping up with demand or if the affordability ordinance had an influence on housing security in Chicago. I was unable to locate the cost per unit or how many units were actually constructed to assess the success of the program independently. Overall, this research design may have been flawed in that I was not able to locate enough quality information to substantiate the claims made by the city on their annual reports. It could be assumed that these programs have had some impact, but the extent could not be substantiated with the information available through their city's website or through research studies. A flaw in the research design was that the assumption that more useful qualitative data could have been found online through their city's published website, white papers, and reports that could help proving the hypothesis. It would have been beneficial if the city provided specific numbers online that could have correlated to substantiate their claims. Another limitation was the time available to complete this study. Due to the limited time frame, I was not able to speak with Chicago public officials, developers, or residents who participated in the housing programs. Therefore, I could not clarify their policy positions, substantiate their claims made in the publicly available data, or assess the perceptions of the policies by the public. Here are my references, and thank you for listening to my presentation.